My guest today is Kathryn Kelso, a BAFTA and BIFA nominated writer from the small rural community of Alloa in the east of Scotland. Now, she graduated from NFTS in 2021 and their pilot script, The Velvet Teddies, which was nominated for the Al3 Media New Drama Script Award. And she co-wrote the standout short film Night of the Living Dread, which received the nomination for BAFTA's Best British Short Animation in 2022 and the British Independent Film Awards Best Short in the same year. And there is also interest in it as a feature film. Now, she was also shortlisted for BAFTA's prestigious Rocliffe TV comedy writing competition for their comedy pilot Mooncats, and she is a Warner Brothers Creative Scholar and a Donald Dewar Arts Awardee. Now, Kathryn Kelso's newest short, First Timer, is about a caregiver named Meghan and her first week on the job as a home carer. Now, she's left alone to visit the elderly Bonnie, who has a refreshing yet challenging approach to her personal care. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome award-winning filmmaker Kathryn Kelso and her new short film, First Timer, to the show. Welcome.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you about the film.
Absolutely. Well, where did the idea for First Timer come from?
So it really is based on a true story. One of my oldest friends, her name's Kim, she was a student nurse, 17 years old, and her first week on the job and award, she was giving an elderly woman a bed bath. And that woman just took her last breath and passed in her arms with no prior indication that this was going to happen. So, of course, it's a really deep and profound moment. And I just always felt like it was a story that should be told to a wider audience. So, yeah, she was the inspiration behind it.
Wow. Now, I love short films so much, and this one really brings a contrast of young and old. And this is a very endearing film. It really touched me as, we should all respect our elders, spend time with them, as well as learn from them. Was that part of this overall story?
Yeah, absolutely. The way that we kind of viewed the story when we were developing it was that it's the start of one woman's life and the end of another, and that beautiful moment where there's just this small but significant moment of connection between the two of them. And definitely there was a sense that our elderly character, Bonnie, that there was something that she could pass on to Meghan, some kind of wisdom. And the way that she does that in the film is in a very particularly Scottish way. You know, she's a very staunch matriarchal woman. She's not afraid to use curse words, or she's unfiltered. But there's something so refreshing about her honesty, and yeah, absolutely, the wisdom that she passes down to Meghan was such. We made such a point of ensuring that that was a thread that was in there.
Well, I found one of the scenes kind of funny in the film where Megan was uh, taking Kaylee's place for the day, and she learned, from Bonnie what Bonnie really thought of Kaylee. So I thought it was really kind of funny because Kaylee seems to be off a lot due to her child, which Bonnie makes a joke about. And it seems like Bonnie doesn't think that Kaylee may actually take her job seriously, but then Megan wants to make a very good impression on her first day, which it seems like she did.
Yeah, and I think that that's exactly why they connect. Because Meghan's so desperate to make a good first impression on this woman that she inadvertently gains her respect. But yeah, there's comedy uh, peppered throughout the script. I'm from a small town in Scotland myself, and misery, tragedy, comedy, they're all inherently intertwined. And yeah, I anything I write, I try and bring that little bit of dark humour, that little Scottish, or as we call it, gallows humour, to everything that I write.
Well, it was done perfectly in this film, and I found it also funny too that well, first of all, I love the fact that Meghan was trying to find a common element to converse with Bonnie and not just be there um, as well as dead weight, so to speak, and but really wanted to be friendly and wanted to communicate with her. But it was so funny when she found that foot bath thing, and when I watched that part of the film, I thought it was kind of funny because when Bonnie goes, "Oh, you got it, you got it to work," because it's like it hasn't worked for a couple of years, but it all came down to that little tab that blocks the battery, so to speak. And then when I saw the ending of the film, Kaylee was just like, "So you got that thing to work?" And Bonnie was just like, I'm not Bonnie, but Megan was like, well, yeah, it was just that little tab. And Kaylee goes, oh yeah, yeah, those things are crazy. And I'm like, it also showed that Kaylee never tried to find out if that bath thing even worked.
Yeah. And those are the little details that are peppered throughout the film that I'm not sure many people pick up on. So thank you for noticing that. With the Kaylee character, I love her, but she's based on so many women that I know that are just so busy and just have to get through the day. And, I completely respect it. It must be incredibly difficult being a carer and having so many clients that you have to attend to, and then you've also got a family. Like it's incredibly, incredibly difficult. But yeah, I do really enjoy Kaylee's contribution to the piece, even though so much of it happens off screen, and like you said, is just about Bonnie's very candid feelings about her.
Well, I also noticed a large contrast between the generations because I found it surprising of Megan's reaction that she had never seen a record player before.
Yeah, and I I wouldn't have believed that unless I had seen it myself, unless I had to explain to a 17-year-old how a record player worked. But I do kind of understand it in a sense that, okay, maybe they have seen a record player before, but the digital world, taking something that is just a flat piece of plastic that has the capacity to play music is, I can understand why that is perplexing, mysterious, almost magical to someone who's never seen it in action. But yeah, there was truth in that moment too.
Yeah, I just love that because at first it surprised me, and but it really shows this wide gap between generations because when you look at the decor in Bonnie's apartment, I mean, you're looking at, decor that's, gosh, 40, 50 years old.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. We had a brilliant production designer named Millie White, and that location, that was pretty much an empty shell of a flat. And she drove a van up from London to Glasgow, a Luton, filled with everything from furniture to all the board games that you see to every photo frame. She did an incredible job. And my friend Kim, who I previously mentioned the film is kind of based on, she plays one of the paramedics in the film because this is what she's working as now, a paramedic. So she came and did a cameo, and she said it's like walking into one of my clients' homes because she was so impressed by how authentic Millie had managed to portray this woman's life by everything around her and in her environment. And one of my favourite things, I don't know if you have them over in the US, but do you know what a loo roll lady is?
No.
Okay, so I guess they were big in the 50s and the 60s, and people in my generation fondly remember their grandparents or great grandparents having these. And essentially, it was a Barbie doll that someone had crocheted a skirt for. And you put her legs in the centre of the toilet roll, and the dress goes over the top, and it was a way to disguise your loo roll in a very kind of glamorous way, but it's very indicative of that generation of women. And Millie was able to source a authentic loo roll lady from the 1950s, and she's in the frame in the bathroom. This is my favorite detail. I think about the my grand's house, and I can smell the cooking matches, and I can smell the margarine, and it really takes me back to a time and a place. So
You know,
yeah, Millie
it,
Millie smashed it.
when I saw the decor, my first thought was, how in the world did you find this place? Because with short films, normally you don't have somebody come in and fully dress, the set, so to speak, to film. Because her front door was pink. You found these bright colors within her apartment. The furniture and all the elements were perfect for Bonnie's generation, for her time period. I mean, it was, I mean, I could have imagined that for all of you, it must have been like walking into a time capsule.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was so nostalgic from, there's so much in everything that I do that's an homage to my grandmother, who was just such a force in this world and still continues to inspire me, even though she's passed over. But so many people were having these collective moments of nostalgia on set where they'd spot something that they would recognize from one of their grandparents' homes, or and that was a lovely point of discussion on set. It's funny that you mentioned the door. The door that was we dirtied it down, but the door was blue, and we covered it with baby pink vinyl and put on a new little door sign. So when we wrapped on the final day of shooting, I, with a friend, painstakingly peeled off all of that pink vinyl from the door.
Wow. I thought it was a perfect shade of pink because
Mm,
it really played well with the whole outlook of the film.
yeah. And that was our intention too. I think, I don't know how au fair you are with Scottish cinema, but I think that a lot of the time we're portrayed as, working class, drug addicts. Everything's always shot in a really cold palette. And I really wanted to just to warm it up and make it this romantic vision of Glasgow, a city that I know and that I love, and this is where I live now. So yeah, so that was what the intention with our warm palette was, and of course that being so much part of Bonnie's environment.
Well, I was going to ask you about the color palette because, you're right about Scottish films. They have a tendency to be on the dark, cooler side, almost to the point of being gray. And
Yeah,
I love the fact that, with when this film started off and as it was moving along, I was just sitting there going, I love the bright, refreshing look. And so I was wondering what type of color palette you decided to use for this film because you went bold and you filmed on 16 millimeter. Why?
yeah, we did. So a little bit of history about me as a filmmaker. I started off specialising, studying cinematography. So my first foray into the industry was working as a trainee and then a camera assistant. And yeah, there I fell in love so much with cinematography and with film. And we thought that this particular story, it just suited the medium of film so much. I think the story has a timeless quality to it. I think the light story perfectly encapsulates. I mean, we're talking about life or death, and I think I wouldn't shoot every film on film, but I think this film particularly, there's a warmth, there's a softness, there's something about it that I hope will endure. And our cinematographer, Alistair Boyce, who is just an exceptional cinematographer, collaborator, he was a great person to have by my side my first time directing. He is just so talented, and yeah, he brought his own style. So we kind of met in the middle. I went to him and I said, I want to do it this way. And he said, he took what I gave him and he said, okay, well, I can give you more. And I said, that's great. That's ideal. And it turned out so beautifully. I couldn't be more proud of the work that he did on this piece.
What was the turnaround time between filming the scenes and then getting the film back to see what it actually looked like?
Right. So I didn't see any of the rushes until we had completely wrapped the film. Because we're based in Glasgow, our developing Kodak is based, it's in London. So that's a 7.5, 8 hour drive. And because we're a tiny, tiny little crew, there was nobody that we could in good conscience ask to drive a 16-hour round trip. So yeah, so we held our nerve. And yeah, I completely trusted Alistair, but I know how many things can go wrong with shooting film. And
Well, okay, then explain this to me because we get a lot of young filmmakers that watch that may not know the answer to this. You film on 16 millimeter. How would you compare 16 millimeter to filming on 4K when you go into post? Because 4K is very forgiving.
yeah, I mean, I think I totally appreciate what you're saying. I think it was a massive risk for us. And I think the way that I shoot as well is I don't love too much movement in the camera. So it's almost like there's nowhere to hide, um, like in the frame at all. But yeah, I think I had a really, really strong team around me, and coupled with my previous experience in camera, there was almost this kind of fearlessness that we had around it, and the discipline that everyone brought to set because we were shooting on film. It was just such a brilliant way to work. It was a measure twice, cut once. We weren't doing one for good luck. We couldn't overshoot. We had to really stick to our shot list. We had to be so precise, so well thought out. But in the end, I think we were so much more efficient. And yeah, I'm really proud of the work that everybody did. The camera team were completely phenomenal.
Yeah,
Could not,
everybody says that. Yeah, when I talk to
yeah.
people who have taken the incentive to film on real film, regardless if it's 8, 16, or 35, they all say the same thing. They really get into the rhythm towards the end because you're very focused on the shots. The whole crew is focused because you can't afford multiple takes, usually no more than two. And once you get those, you usually pick the best one out of those two because time is of the essence. But at the same time, you're dealing with feet of film and not dealing with a digital card. So I think that filming on film makes a filmmaker better. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, there were things that I had to be really, really aware of, and I looked back to directors who've shot on film before, and I tried to read as much. I tried to listen to as many interviews behind the scenes, because the thing that really concerned me was about working with the actors and not having access to playback, which we didn't on this shoot. Well, we did, but it wasn't great, and our monitor wasn't great. So yeah, I learned a lot about how to watch a performance outside of the monitor, which I think is going to really help me in my next short, even if my next short we shoot digitally, because it was just, I really had to be specific about what I was looking for. I had to be so tuned in, so present every second of every take, even at the top, even before we really start. Before we start performing, and even at the end, before you yell cut, just finding the space in between, being super attentive. But yeah, it was a good skill set. It was a bit of a thrill as well, I would say. I think everyone was getting a bit of a buzz out of it, because this was our art form, for 100 years. This is how we did things, and not everybody gets the chance to be part of something that has meant so much to our entire species for so long. And it's just this beautiful chemical miracle, isn't it? It's light and it's chemicals, and it's yeah, fabulous. I'm so glad that everyone was able to experience that.
Well, tell me how you casted the parts for Meghan and Bonnie.
Yeah, so we used this brilliant Des Hamilton casting. So they're pretty big in the UK. Des Hamilton, he is from Glasgow himself, but he kind of made his way in the industry because he was really into street casting, and he cast This Is England, which was a massive breakthrough for all the stars involved. And he also cast Top Boy, which again, he's like finding some of the best new talent in the UK. So we had a meeting with him because he's from Glasgow, because he's done so brilliantly in the industry. He wanted to come on board, he wanted to help us. And he and his team brought us some of the most incredible young Scottish talent and some of the most incredible. Anne Downey, who plays Bonnie, she's 86 years old now. She's a Scottish legend. She's an institution. She's a writer. She's an actor. She's been at the National Theatre. She's been on TV for 60 years. She's just wonderful. So we really got the best of the old school and the best of the new school. Aelith Ross, who plays Meghan, what a revelation. And we were very lucky that we just caught her on her way up. She's now one of the leads in Brian Elsie's new show. So he created Skins. And this is called Councils. It's set in Glasgow, and she's one of the leads in it. And I can just see her going from here to here. It's going to happen.
Wow. Well, I want to
Already
talk.
happening.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the scene with Bonnie when Megan, she finally got to. Well, Bonnie finally got to uh, test out the foot bath, and she was you could tell she was so excited, and but then where, her and Megan were having that short conversation, she was, where Bonnie was talking about going on the group trip for next week. And of course, Megan's, painting her toenails. What I was so amazed about Bonnie and her acting when she closed her eyes. And see, and you had just alluded to the fact that you didn't have a playback monitor, so you had to really focus in on the performance because you're using real film. When Bonnie was sitting in the chair, she was talking about the trip she was going to make for next week, but then she closed her eyes. But there's that shot where her eyes slowly open. And I replayed that over and over again because I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, to I don't think I've ever seen that ever done. And
Yeah.
what was your thought on set when you saw her do that scene where she closed her eyes and then they just slowly opened and we kind of thought we knew what was going on? What was your thought and emotion when you saw her do that scene?
Yeah, that was such an emotionally charged scene for everyone involved. So I hope Anne won't mind me saying this, but her performance was based off losing her husband a few years previous, and she had been immediately by his side when he had passed over. And she was essentially recreating what she witnessed with someone who she cared for deeply and the way in which she passed over. I also think it's one of these film tropes, isn't it, that you might close your eyes when you pass over, but that's certainly not the case for the majority of people. Your eyes actually open. And I feel like we had this discussion where I wouldn't describe the film as social realism, but I definitely think there's a natural quality to it that we wanted to get these particular moments right. And we were just really incredibly grateful that our wonderful actor, Anne, that she felt comfortable enough with us that she could bring that contribution to the piece. And I think it's beautiful. I completely agree with you. There's something about that moment where you're not quite sure, but you know something is not right. And yeah, that's also a really hard note to give an actor, right? It has to be enough. It's about the levels here. It has to be enough that we're signaling something's changed, but it not so overt that we're giving the game away, and that we discover in Meghan's perspective at the moment she discovers that Bonnie's passed
Yeah,
over.
because when you see Bonnie close her eyes and then you see them open, you have this small, it's almost like this invisible small gap of time that when the audience sees her eyes open and then the camera goes to Meghan and then we're all waiting on if Meghan's going to know what we know. And the movement that Annie did with her eyes, I was just like, wow, what a performance that was, because it was so authentic, it was so natural. I had never seen that done by anyone. And but then you have Meghan, and of course, and I want to know how Annie did this. So when Meghan is, you know, saying Bonnie, Bonnie, and then she gets up to check her pulse. How in the world did Annie sit there so still? I
Yeah,
mean, really, she played that part beyond perfectly. I mean, even after the eye opening scene, even the rest of the film in which Bonnie was still in frame, I mean, you really thought she really played that part well.
yeah, it's so believable. And I think what we are looking at is that she has experienced this herself, but also the breadth of experience she's had throughout her entire career. She's just such a consummate professional, right? They just don't make them like that anymore. But yeah, I completely agree. I think the strongest thing about the film are the performances, and I'm also really grateful that Anne and Aelith were really they were so giving, you know. It must be really hard to trust somebody who, as a screenwriter, I have like a really healthy career, but this was the first film that I was going to direct, and it must be, you must have your barrier up a little bit as an actor working with a new director, because you don't know how experienced they're going to be. And there were times when I really felt like, okay, this has been a long day where we're dealing with such intense themes, and emotionally it's really charged on set. Everyone is feeling really, really profoundly upset, and they took care of me. So for a lot of those scenes, a lot of the really tricky scenes, it was just the three of us, you know, and checks would come in, but there was definitely this circle of trust, and I'm just eternally grateful that they they were just so brilliant with me, not just at their performances, but with being open to working with somebody who, I mean, I was so concerned that I wasn't going to know how to have a dialogue with actors. I was terrified of them. and
Well,
and then yeah, we started working together, and I know it sounds cliche, but I think we were all feeding off of the magic happening, and we knew the magic was happening, and that was
oh, I
good.
believe it. And I hear that a lot. There's there's so much magic in filmmaking, and those are experiences that people will never ever forget. And that's why they call it the magic of movie making. There is a magic to it. There's a magic that happens on set. And and I loved the scene that after Megan realized that Bonnie had passed, that she did the dignified thing and finished painting her toenails. I thought that was such a very sweet moment because she knew that Bonnie cared about her appearance. Megan knew
Yeah,
that, and she didn't want to leave, the job undone for
yeah.
herself and also for Bonnie. So that one act was really for both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this comes down to if you're in the medical profession or in the caring profession, you are trained to speak to the person if they pass over. And exactly like you said, not only is it an act of care for someone even though they've passed, it's incredibly dignifying, but mentally, it's really, really helpful for you, because these moments are so intense and so profound. And like you said, Bonnie cared so much about the way she looked, and for Megan to go and finish the job, it only felt right.
Well, I also like the fact that you set it up to where Bonnie didn't pass away alone. The last words out of her mouth was she's talking about looking forward to the future and a happy moment that she's going to have with her group next week. And then at the end of the film, Kaylee lets Megan know, sometimes we don't find them until, a few days have passed. And then I thought, wow, so many people die alone and there's no one there. And then no one comes around for a few days. So I love the way
Yeah.
you put a contrast within this storyline.
Yeah, I think again that was just pulling from my own experiences. Um, I didn't know my grandfather on my mother's side. He had a kind of history of substance abuse, and they'd fallen out for decades before he passed. So he was never in my life, but that is what happened to him, and he died by himself, and nobody realised for 2 weeks until a neighbour, recognised the smell coming through the door, and phoned somebody. And so I think that story had always kind of stuck with me. But also I was speaking to carers who they had been with more than one person who'd passed in their careers. You know, that this for one woman, Wilma, who also worked in development with us, before she worked in film, she was a carer, and she had been with numerous people as they passed over because she worked in elderly care. So it was just, I had this like terrible tragic thing that had happened, you know, like in my family, and then I had these beautiful stories where people weren't alone when they passed over, and I think all of that was kind of, I was just ruminating on that. But I'm glad Bonnie had somebody with her, and yeah, I I hope to go myself like that
Well,
one
you know,
day.
but you close it out. You close it out perfect. And I actually watched the ending a few times because I wanted to catch the conversation between Meghan and Kaylee, but then it was the ending shot of the laundry out on the line. And I thought it was so sweet that even Meghan was going to wait for it to dry before taking it down. She didn't want to leave a job unfinished, as she knows that she was there to help Bonnie, but she also knows that Bonnie would have never left a job unfinished as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And there's something that I find really profound about doing washing and hanging it up in the back. I find it's my favorite thing. It's so peaceful, and it's just a really, really mindful act. And there's just something that I found really beautiful about the idea that at some point you're going to do your last load of washing, and the idea that you could die before it dries. I don't know, just something about that just resonated inside of me. And also in Scotland, lentil soup is a kind of a delicacy that everyone's granny makes them. And yeah, in this, Bonnie makes her last pot of lentil soup as well. And a little detail at the end, when Kaylee walks out, she's holding a Tupperware full of Bonnie's lentil soup, because you would not waste that. You could not let that go to waste. That is a sacred thing, that
I
woman's
noticed
last
it.
pot of soup.
Yeah. I noticed it when Kaylee came out, and I'm thinking, is that the soup?
Yeah, exactly. But you could never let that go out. My goodness, like that is the most important pot of soup she's ever made in her life. And Bonnie would be so affronted if she knew that it had went to waste. My goodness.
Wow. Now tell me about the opening song when the film starts. Why did you choose that particular song?
So my dad is a musician, and he's wonderful, and he's introduced me to all sorts of music throughout the years. And I was really struggling with what that first song should be. Now, my producer Daniel Goff, who's incredible, when we were developing this piece together, we got drunk one night and we were listening to 60s music that our grandparents introduced us to. And we knew that that had to be part of Bonnie's identity. She would have grown up loving all the music in Motown and all those like 60s girl bands. And we even concocted a backstory that for her 50th birthday, she, she she went to the US and she did a once in a lifetime trip with her husband at the time. And yeah, so that was all kind of baked into there. But I had been listening to Laura Nyro, and it was my dad. I was in the car with him, and this is where we have our like father daughter chats. It's like in the car, driving always. And I'm telling her, I say, there's something about, I just don't know what this song is. It used to be this song, but now we've shot the film. It doesn't feel right. And he just put "Story In" by Laura Nyro on, and I said, that's it. That's the song. It's so perfect, lyrically, but also, the feeling, a joy that it evokes. as well as I just knew that Bonnie would love this song, would love the music of Laura Nyro. She really is one of the best singer-songwriters of all time. So I'm so glad that we were able to clear that song and have it be a part of the film, because it's so special to me. I'm so glad you brought it up.
Well, what was the significance of the two records on the wall?
Yeah, so this is another part of what we kind of baked into all of the design in Bonnie's environment, is that she collected gold records, and of course she's got a record player. And I kind of loved the idea that back in the day she would get up at karaoke and she'd sing the Supremes, or she had a real vested interest in that, because something that I wanted to be clear about was that Bonnie was cool. Like, I firmly believe that older women are the coolest people in the world, and there's so much we can learn from them. And love I just love that you can get to a certain age and you seem to no longer be hindered by a patriarchal society, or feel that you have to be quiet or small, and you can just let it rip. I cannot wait to get there. So yeah, so it was kind of a tapestry of all of that.
Well, I loved it. Now, has this film premiered at any of the film festivals so far? And if so, what has been the audience's reaction?
Yeah, so we've done a pretty good festival run, mostly in the UK. Sometimes you do hear a couple of sniffles in the audience afterwards, which is fine. But yeah, I think the most profound reactions that I've had would be afterwards. People have taken me to the side and they've said, "I've been with someone who's passed, and that felt really truthful." And people would also say, it's really nice to see a Scottish film that's about women, because there aren't too many of them out there yet. um, but yeah, for the most part, I think it really touches uh, nostalgia and connection, and I think it can be a balm if you have a fear of passing over, or someone who you know and love passing over anytime soon. I think it can show that death, there can be a beauty to it, as scary as it is. It's a process, and yeah, we just screened at Holly Shorts in London, but sadly I couldn't be there because the train system in the UK is not ideal, and my train was cancelled due to a storm. Which really, that's fair. I can't blame the train system for a storm. But my producer Danielle Goff was there, and our composer Joe was there, and they said again that it just got a brilliant reception. And then as a result, we got a couple of really good reviews through on Letterboxd. So even though I wasn't there, people still reached out to me online and said how much they enjoyed it. So yeah, so overall, I think it's a moment of connection, and people have, admittedly, they've been upset, but
Well,
yeah.
so you're going to have a full festival run in 2026?
Yes, yes. So we've done really well in the UK. So our strategy was we were going to put the film out in the UK first, and just see how it is, and then decide what our next strategy was going to be. But because we have had such a brilliant response so far, we are going to open it up to international festivals now. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to coming to the US, hopefully, and screening it there.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I loved the film. There was so much to dive into with this incredible story. And ladies and gentlemen, Hannah Kathryn Kelso's newest short, First Timer. It's about a caregiver named Meghan, and on her first week on the job as a home carer, she's left alone to visit the elderly Bonnie, who has had a refreshing yet challenging approach to her personal care. Now, this film is endearing on so many levels, and it was such a joy to watch. Even though it ends on a bit of a sad note, we aren't left with a feeling of sadness. We're left with the feeling that we should all pay more attention to the older generation, learn to interact with them, learn from them, and even gain some wisdom from them. Now, Bonnie even left Meghan with a few words of that wisdom by saying, "You just keep going." And many of you need to hear that regardless of what happens in life. Just keep going. Now, Hannah went bold by filming in 16 millimeter, something I'm lucky enough to see once or twice a year. Real film adds a different feel to the story, and in this case, it's used to complement the time period in which Bonnie has also lived, and she filmed life. Well, I should say Hannah filmed life in full Technicolor, and it's so great to see real film still being used today. Now, the cinematography, it's bright, it's joyful, it's refreshing, and again, complements the life of Bonnie, as well as, again, the words of wisdom she gave to Meghan. And Hannah, thank you so much for sharing this film with me today, and much success to you, as I know everyone who sees this film will love it as much as I did.
Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words. It was so lovely to chat to you, and I hope you have a great evening.
I will do that. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. And remember, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.